the Indianapolis 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. These three motor races are considered the biggest prizes in all of motorsports, and are also three of the oldest races in the world. The first Indianapolis 500 was run in 1911, and the Monaco Grand Prix in 1929. Traditionally, both races are held on the same day, the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. Le Mans is run in mid-June near the summer solstice, with the first edition of the race being held in 1923, taking place at the Circuit de la Sarthe, a mix of purpose-built facilities and public roads of the French countryside. These three races are collectively known as the Triple Crown of Motorsports, and despite each one being almost 100 years old or more, and thousands of drivers competing within them, only one man has ever managed to win all three legs of the Triple Crown. On the 15th of February 1929 in Hampstead, London, the man who would later be known as Mr. Monaco, Norman Graham Hill, was born, to Norman Herbert Devereux Hill and Constance Mary. Graham Hill attended technical school to study engineering and became an engineering apprentice when he was 16 years old. He later completed his national service requirement with the Royal Navy and then joined the London Rowing Club in 1952, his first participation in any kind of racing. He would famously wear the LRC's logo on his racing helmets throughout his entire career. Hill actually would not pass a driving test to earn his road license until he was 24 years old. In that same year, he would visit the Brands Hatch racing circuit near London, where the Universal Motor Racing Club was letting pretty much anyone take a few laps around the historic track in a Formula 3 car for only 5 shillings. Graham paid the cash, and after his track time was, quote, immediately bitten by the racing bug. After making his racing debut in Formula 3, Hill joined Team Lotus as a mechanic, but was able to parlay this into a couple of race drives in lower formula for the team. However, in 1958, Lotus boss and mechanical genius Colin Chapman would take the team Grand Prix racing, making their Formula 1 debut in the 1958 Monaco Grand Prix, with none other than Graham Hill driving one of the team's 2 entries. However, both would fail to finish the race due to mechanical failures. Also in 1958, Clark would compete in his first 24 Hours of Le Mans, taking an extremely impressive second-place finish, driving an Aston Martin DB3S alongside Peter Whitehead. This was just a different time in motorsports, where someone could just join a team and eventually talk their way into a race car for funsies. This can never happen in modern Formula 1, as drivers must now have a certain number of points on their racing license by competing in lower championships, along with most drivers bringing hefty sponsorship checks to the teams that employ them. Also, Hill made his F1 debut at 29 years old, which is damn near ancient in modern F1. 5 rookie drivers are in Formula 1 for the 2025 season, with the oldest being Jack Doohan at 22 years old, and the youngest driver, Kimi Antonelli, being only 18 years old. Out of the 20 drivers on the 2025 F1 grid, only 4 drivers are 30 or older. Take the 3 oldest drivers off the grid, and the average age of an F1 driver this year is 24 years old. It's a young man's sport today. But back then, charisma alone could land you in a Formula 1 car, and apparently this was something that Graham Hill was very good at. According to Formula1.com's profile on him, Hill talked his way into a job as a mechanic at a racing school where he soon became an instructor, before he ever joined Team Lotus and after he had only competed in a couple of races. Hill was obviously a skilled driver as his career shows, but nobody knew that yet. I don't even think Hill himself knew it. After a couple of fruitless years driving for Lotus, Hill made the switch to British Racing Motors in 1960. Over the next 3 seasons, Hill and the team would see remarkable improvement, with Hill winning his first race, the 1962 Dutch Grand Prix held at Zandvoort. Hill would win 3 more times that year and take home the 1962 Formula 1 Drivers' World Championship. Together with teammate Richie Ginther, BRM would also win the Constructors' Championship, with both titles being the team's sole championship wins before leaving the sport in 1977. The next season, Hill would complete the first leg of the Triple Crown, winning the 1963 Monaco Grand Prix. Hill started second on the grid and would battle his teammate Richie Ginther, John Surtees, and perhaps his biggest rival Jim Clark for the lead of the 100-lap race. Clark would drop out of the race on lap 78 due to a gearbox failure, handing the lead and the win to Hill. Graham Hill and Jim Clark's rivalry was significant in that Clark was driving for Team Lotus, having taken over the car that Hill had stepped out of to switch to BRM. This could be seen as a monumental screw-up on Hill's part, as Lotus emerged to become one of the most dominant F1 teams of the 1960s after Hill had left. Hill did win a world title first, having won the World Drivers' Championship in 1962 after pulling the BRM team around him out of the doldrums. However, Hill would finish second in the championship to Jim Clark's Lotus in 1963 and 1965. In those 2 seasons, Clark won 13 of 20 races, while Hill won only 4 times. Clark also stood on 15 podiums, won pole position 12 times, and set 12 fastest laps. Hill had 11 podiums, sat on pole 6 times, and set 3 fastest laps. One of the races Hill won in this time was the 1965 Monaco Grand Prix, a race Clark didn't even enter. Those wins, podiums, and championships could have been Hill's had he not left Lotus when he did. In the year in between, 1964, Hill once again finished second in the point standings, this time to the Ferrari of John Surtees, and won 2 races that year compared to Clark's 3, who finished third in the standings. On May 30th, 1966, Graham Hill would enter the Indianapolis 500. This was Hill's first attempt in the historic event, qualifying 15th in the 33-car field, lining up on the outside of the 5th row. He was out-qualified by fellow F1 competitor and Indy 500 rookie Jackie Stewart, along with who else but Jim Clark, who was defending his 1965 Indy 500 victory. Before the race could really get underway, Billy Foster would spin just past the start-finish line when the green flag was dropped. This caused a pile-up involving 16 of the race's 33 competitors, 11 of which were terminally damaged and dropped out of the race. Jackie Stewart's car lost oil pressure while leading the race with only 10 laps to go, handing the lead over to Graham Hill, who would lead the final 10 laps and win the race. This wasn't without controversy though, as Jim Clark, the man who finished second, claimed he was the winner and was placed second due to a scoring error. This was well before electronic timing and scoring would be introduced to motor racing. So each lap of each race, the officials would manually keep track of each car lap by lap, either on scoring cards or simply by taking notes. Hill admitted he was surprised to be declared the winner. However, Clark's team, which was the same Team Lotus he drove for in F1, never filed an official protest. One thing I want to talk about real quick. It is extremely uncommon for Formula 1 drivers to participate in races outside of F1 these days. A lot of that can be credited to the season calendar being longer now than any time in history, with a whopping 24 races in 20 different countries. But also, most F1 drivers today have only ever driven Formula-style single-seater cars. Max Verstappen, who has completely dominated F1 the past 4 seasons with 53 race wins and 4 Drivers' World titles, has never driven anything other than a go-kart and a Formula car. Hill, on the other hand, was competing in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the British Saloon Car Championship, Formula 2, the Tasman Series, and the Indy 500, and a lot of his contemporaries were as well. Clark competed in a lot of these same races and championships along with Jackie Stewart. Race car drivers were just built different back then. Hill would win the Monaco Grand Prix 4 more times in his F1 career, making it a three-peat from 1963 to 1965, winning the race back-to-back in 68 and 69, earning him the nickname of Mr. Monaco. 3 years after his final Monaco win though, Graham would complete the Triple Crown, driving a Matra Stemke MS670 prototype alongside Frenchman Henri Pescarola in 1972. Despite challenges from the teammate Matra of Francois Cervert and Howden Ganley, the Alfa Romeo and Lola prototypes along with on and off rain showers through the night and early morning, Hill and Pescarola would cruise to the win with an 11-lap lead over Cervert and Ganley. It was the first win in the 24 hours by a French car in 22 years, and despite the jubilation of Hill winning the Triple Crown, it wasn't without sorrow. John Bonnier, Graham Hill's friend, a fellow F1 driver, and Hill's former teammate, had died in a vicious crash at 8:25 Sunday morning, after crashing his Lola prototype into a Ferrari GT car near the Mulsanne Straight. Hill knew of the accident, but hadn't been informed of Bonnier's death until after the race had concluded. Despite Hill's win at Le Mans in 72, things were not going well for him on the F1 side of things at that time. Graham had returned to Team Lotus for the 1967 season, however the team was struggling to develop its car at the time, the Lotus 49. Despite this, Jim Clark still won 4 races compared to Hill's 0, with them finishing 3rd and 7th in the driver's standings respectively. However, tragedy struck on April 7, 1968. Clark, competing in a Formula 2 race at the Hockenheim Ring alongside Hill, veered off track and crashed into the trees lining both sides of the circuit, and would die before ever reaching a hospital. The cause of the crash was never determined, but many speculated a punctured tire was the culprit. Colin Chapman said he had lost his best friend, while Hill had to pull the team together for the remaining 11 races on the F1 calendar. Hill would end up taking 3 victories that year and 6 podiums to win the 1968 F1 World Drivers' Championship, helping the team heal from Clark's death. His victory in the 1969 Monaco Grand Prix would be the final win of Hill's Formula 1 career. That October, Hill would crash out of the United States Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, breaking both of his legs, and his F1 career never recovered. Now that he was underperforming, Colin Chapman moved Hill over to the Rob Walker racing team, along with one of Lotus's new Lotus 72 cars for him to compete in. Now in his 40s and seen as damaged goods, Hill refused to retire and would drive for the Brabham team in 1971 and 1972, before forming his own team, Embassy Racing, for the 1973 season. Hill would drive for his own team from 1973 to 1975. Having failed to qualify for the 1975 Monaco Grand Prix, the race he had seen so much success in, Hill seemed to take it as a sign and retired from Formula One almost immediately. He instead focused on managing the team and took on the team's other driver, Tony Breese, on as a protege. However, on the night of November 29th of that year, Hill, Breese, and several other members of the Embassy Racing team were tragically killed when the Piper Aztec aircraft Hill was piloting crashed on an approach to Elstree Airfield near London. The group was returning from a testing session at Circuit Paul Ricard in Le Castellet, France. Embassy Racing folded soon after. To this day, Graham Hill is still the only man to have ever completed the Triple Crown of Motorsports. Only 7 other men have completed 2/3 of the crown. However, a second version of the Triple Crown, which includes the F1 World Drivers' Championship, instead of any of the 3 races, is a thing too for some reason. Even when including this, the list only grows to 13 drivers. To me, the Triple Crown is Indy, Le Mans, and Monaco, not the F1 title. The only driver who has a real shot at the Triple Crown right now is Fernando Alonso, the oldest driver on the F1 grid at 43 years old. Alonso has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans twice in 2018 and 2019, and the Monaco Grand Prix twice in 2006 and 2007. He's also attempted 3 Indianapolis 500s, finishing 24th in 2017 and 21st in 2020. However, he failed to qualify for the race in 2019. The 2017 race was easily Fernando's best chance at winning, having led 27 laps and hanging around the top 5 all day, but an engine failure with 20 laps to go ended the dream. Despite finishing 3 positions higher in 2020, Alonso was a complete non-factor that year, having barely made it into the field and finishing a lap down to eventual winner Takuma Sato, who also won the 2017 race. As of right now, I don't see Fernando Alonso making another trip to Indianapolis anytime soon, but dude is kind of a wild card, so who knows. The only other person who has a realistic chance of winning it is Juan Pablo Montoya. JPM is a 2-time Indy 500 winner, having crossed the yard of bricks in 2000 and 2015, and also won the Monaco Grand Prix in 2003. He's also won the 24 Hours of Daytona twice in 2007 and 2008. There is a bit of a caveat here, as JPM has won in class at Le Mans, winning the LMP2 Pro-Am class in 2021. However, an overall win is required to claim the elusive Triple Crown. So will anyone else ever win the Triple Crown? I mean, probably, unless the world explodes within the next century, which, hey, it might. I would love to see someone do it. It would be witnessing history. The problem these days is that drivers mostly stick to what they know instead of crossing over into multiple disciplines like Hill and company were doing back in the day. Guys and gals are more prone to stick to what they know, whether that's open wheel, stock cars, or Grand Tourers. There are some drivers who still cross over, like Scott Dixon, who drives full-time in the IndyCar series and shows up to help Chip Ganassi Racing in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Series for the endurance races on the calendar. Maybe this trend will continue well into the future. Maybe no one will ever win it again. That would leave Mr. Monaco himself as the one true king. As always, thank you for watching. I'm Rickama13, and I'll see you next time.
The fans really seem to enjoy that. You made it look easy.